So, I found Raven of the Jagged Shore some years back, occasionally popping in every now and then when I needed to entertain myself or having a spot of 2-minute noodles when I found that she'd released a book. Interesting, I thought, and looked it up on Amazon. 2 months later, I was with a bunch of people I barely knew from England and was too shy to talk to any of them. So I decided to buy a book for my Kindle. Finished that after a few days and realized I needed something else to satisfy my desire to be left alone and bought another book. Finished that in even less time, but then needed something else. Remembered Day of the Dawn Beach was a thing and then bought a book. Got 50% of the way through it, got bored, bought another book and didn't finish it for 5 months. And then made this review since I'm not motivated to do anything else. Hooray.
I am the Grim Reaper.
Who?
The Grim Reaper.
Yes, I see.
I am death.
Yes, well, the thing is, we've got some people from America for dinner tonight.
Who is it, darling?
It's a Mr. Death or something. He's come about the reaping.
I've been pondering on the longest time how to review this work since I want my book reviews to be different from my movie reviews, since on movies you can have hundreds of people working on together and still come up with Sturdischeiser, but with books there's only one person. And a very unnecessarily mean review can turn someone off their dreams, so I'll avoid calling anyone a very, very naughty word unless warranted. Or unless I feel like it. I think the best way I can describe this book is the way Star Wars fans like to say how Lord of the Rings is bad because it's walking from A to B. This is that. This book is walking from A not even close to B. We're still in the same location by the end. Granted, the story takes place over roughly 4 days and most of the book is meh. Not bad, not amazing, just meh. Now, there were parts where I couldn't put it down, I was so invested, while other times I just wanted this perspective to change so I can get to something less mind-numbingly boring. Now, when I say there were parts where I couldn't put the book down, I mean this. The opener was fun and got us into the mind of the maniest main character, Emily, who was interesting until roughly page 50 where she gets all the character development necessary so that we care when she's in danger, but not enough when she gets out of said danger. The second character, and the book's name Ishsake, is Death himself, and this might just be me, but he really started to grate on me something fierce. For instance, Emily keeps asking him questions about such heaven, hell, existence, as you do, and he keeps giving cryptic and hidden answers, which were admittedly a nice idea at first, but gets annoying pretty fast, and by the end I was having to put the book down every time one of those scenes came up. But I see what Caven of Neverbeach was going for, it just didn't quite get there in the end. Now, hang me by the neck if you wish, but I found the other 3 characters, being Carol, Leif, and Scott, to be more interesting and entertaining than Emily or Death. Leif being a very charismatic and slightly sociopathic vampire that has a distaste for younger and more egotistical members of his kind, Carol is a female robot with laser guns in her arms and is the protector of Scott, a constantly tired and bitter 20-year-old who just can't seem to catch a break, resulting in somewhat whiny outbursts. Carol and Scott's story takes a bit to get interesting, but right off the bat, Leif was my favourite character by a large margin, with Carol sneaking her way up there by the end. The story revolves around everyone starting to get to New York, which is the home base of the LPI, or the Life Preservation Initiative, which Emily is a part of, with several hijinks along the way, like Carol shooting at everyone she deems a threat, constant car breakdowns, vampires trying to catch Leif, and a friendly family meeting of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Which brings me around to the few flaws of the book. Death, being his namesake itself, is obviously a powerful entity, but it explains that he lost his power and his entire story is trying to get it back, and how vital it is to get to New York as quickly as possible, and then decides to walk his way there. Even though he's seen several times throughout the story jumping from behind mountains to block laser bolts, meaning that he can at least move at the speed of light. Which confused me as to why he simply didn't Looney Tunes his way there in literal seconds. Just a thought. Another thing I found rather jarring was several times in flashbacks we meet Scott's sister, who the third-person narrator describes as being someone who only cares about her work so much that she doesn't really care about other people. And yet several times gets political and brings up the patriarchy in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. I'll say that again. She brings up the patriarchy in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. Something I could easily forgive if it just didn't sound so much like the author just couldn't help herself and had to put her own political ideology into her work. Which she is totally allowed to do, by the way. Her work, her rules. It just sounded so off and jarring at the time. What's even worse is that she says it to Scott, who just needs a fucking break at that point. Another thing I noticed was in the beginning of the book, Leif rigs his mates' coffins with explosives to kill them while he runs away. But Emily's people blow them up first and kill all but 2. These 2 track Leif down a few days later and capture him. We then see the 2 vampires as pillars of dust later on the ground around their coffins, and Leif is seen a few pages later with barely a feather ruffled. So here's the question. How did the 2 manage to escape the explosion, take their coffins with them in a truck full of zombies, catch up to Leif a few days later and kidnap him, go to sleep in their coffins and die and leave Leif in an easily escapable place? And in that time, did these 2 heightened censored immortal beings not notice the fucking C4 in their beds? It just raised an eyebrow. Granted, it rose a full foot off my head, but it just raised an eyebrow. We're at the end now, so I guess I gotta leave this on a high note, so here we go. The writing style got better as the book progressed and was unique in its own way. The lore and the rules of the world, though never said aloud, are easy to get and quite interesting actually. Each character had a neat quirk that added to them, even only if by a little. I will read the sequel, and if I may, am slightly excited for it. Though this book was boring as hell at times, it was also interesting, heartbreaking, and a few times made me laugh aloud, something only one other book character in history has ever made me do. The description of the landscapes, though a bit copy and paste at times, could be absolutely beautiful to read, and a few other things here and there. The Amazon link to the Company of Death and Maven of the Abattoir's YouTube channel are in the description, so go ham I guess. Bye.